Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of StressFreeNow.info. Our featured guest today is Laura Stewart, writer, author, coach, entrepreneur. Laura Stewart intuitively knows the right questions to ask, from the wisdom she learned at her mother's side to the insight she gained baking pies with her grandmother. Laura has developed an innate ability to ask the questions that propel business leaders and entrepreneurs to incredible achievements. Laura operates from a simple philosophy: treat people better than they expect to be treated, and it is from this belief that she was able to carve her niche and stand out in the highly competitive IT field, building Guardian Angel Computer Services from a sole employee business into a leading provider of managed technical services. Throughout her life, Laura questions the decisions she made along with the decisions made by others. Based on the answers she received, Laura was able to build and 15 years later sell her highly successful IT business before starting Wisdom Learned LLC, a company dedicated to educating leaders based on experience and wisdom learned in the trenches. Laura is a sought-after speaker, Nautilus Award-winning and international best-selling author, business advisor, confidant, and friend. She's the author of the best-selling book, What Would a Wise Woman Do? Questions to Ask Along the Way, which has remained on the Amazon Women in Business bestseller list for over 90 weeks. Through her weekly radio show, Entrepreneur Master Class, keynote speeches, books, seminars, training, and one-on-one sessions, Laura's mission is clear: help people get off autopilot and create amazing, successful lives. Audience, welcome.
Welcome. And Laura, we are so happy to be having you on as a guest for our show. Welcome, and thank you for agreeing to speak with us. I know our audience is going to really get an amazing treat today by having you share your wisdom with us.
Hi, Laura. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's so exciting to be here with you, Bob, and you, Christine. I mean, it's just been way too long in coming, and it's all my fault, so I'm just so excited to be here with the two of you.
Great. So, Laura, you know, you've written a book. Tell our audience about that, and your theme is it's all about the questions. So tell our audience how you came to that point where that has become almost like a mantra or motto or a main theme for what it is that you do.
Well, it's really been like a lifelong quest, search, motto, mantra, as you said. The book is What Would a Wise Woman Do? Questions to Ask Along the Way. And my broadcast radio show is called It's All About the Questions. I wrote the book when I sold my multi-state technology services company, and my contract had ended with the company that bought my company. I was like, now what? What's next? And the idea for What Would a Wise Woman Do came to me, and I got a publisher pretty quickly. So, you know, it's one of those, everything came together and aligned beautifully. I really, truly believe that the right questions can change your life, and my mom taught me that when I went into first grade firsthand, that the questions you ask really determine the outcomes, and that most of us ask questions to get the answers we want. Not necessarily the answers we need, but the answers we want. So we direct our questions. I mean, how many times have you guys, I know I've done this myself, asked a question we didn't necessarily like the answer, so we kept asking a bunch of different people until we got the answer we wanted. Yeah, see, I knew that was the right thought that I was having.
Oh, no, people don't really do that, do they? Do we do stuff like that?
No, never. And, you know, I was going into first grade, and I really wanted to learn how to read. And when I walked in, the teacher said, well, you're not learning to read. And she actually said, not learning to read today. I took it as I'm not learning to read. So I walked out of school, walked a mile home, showed up at the door. Mom's on the phone with the principal, Mrs. Steinmetz. And she ended up bringing me back to school and sat down with the principal and my first grade teacher, Mrs. Fite, and asked them why they weren't going to teach me to read. And they said, oh, well, we will, but your last name starts with an S, so she's not slated to learn for, you know, another week or so because they go by the alphabet to teach you, which is kind of funny if you think about it. They're doing alphabetically to teach you how to read. And I mean, I never even thought of that till just this moment.
Completely illogical, right?
Completely illogical, right? Not like Spock at all from Star Trek, completely illogical. And I'm sitting there, and like Mr. Spock, right, my mom is just asking question after question of the principal and my teacher, and they're just giving, well, because that's the only way we've always done it. Well, we can't change the policy. No, she's just going to have to wait. And after about what felt like forever to me as a 5, 6-year-old kid, they finally, my mother, after asking them why, said, you know what, there's absolutely no reason why we can't teach her to read just because her name starts with an S. She will start tomorrow.
Laura, I'm listening to your story, and I know our listeners could really relate to what you said. How many times have any of us, bumped into this level of unreasonableness where the answer, when you ask the question, the person you're talking to can't give any kind of rational reasoning for why they are doing the action or behavior. It's just like, well, we've always done it like this, and you're a troublemaker, actually.
Right.
And so thank you for that. And here's just a quick question. That had to be so stressful for you and your mom, because think about this. This is many, many years later, but think about how clearly you have been able to relate that story, how much impact it must have had on you. And, for our listeners, how many people have stories where something, how old were you at that point? You were 5 or you were 6 years old?
Yeah, I was 5, 6 years old, right around in there.
So think about what the point that I'm making is that even at 5 or 6 years old, something that happens to us, how much impact it has, because look at how the level of clarity with which you've been able to relate this story, even though it's more than 5 years ago.
But I think this demonstrates something else, Bob, and Laura, this is a beautiful story because you're conveying quite a bit here. As you said, in the mind of a child, you're looking for an immediate result, and you're taking things literally, which is what a child would do when your teacher said, you're not going to learn to read. You didn't understand the today part. And from the administrator's points of view, how else would we do it but alphabetically? I remember in school, they used to seat us in our chairs in height order, and I was always sitting in the back of the classroom, and I was nearsighted, and there were many of my classmates, shorter than I, who would have been happy to sit in the back of the room because they could see perfectly well, but I couldn't.
That really impacted your learning.
It did. And, there's so many constructs that way in society that things are the way they are, and what's the rationale? Granted, you have a lot of people, and you figure this is the best way, but is it really the best way? And your questions and your mother's questions got you a wonderful result, that you were able to start to read earlier than they had you slated for.
Right, and it wasn't as if they needed to change the overall policy. They needed to make an exception because this was a very unique case. Like if they had allowed you to sit towards the front of the classroom because you had trouble seeing things from a distance.
And nothing would break if they did that.
No, but we get so wrapped up in that, right, which is the whole idea of most of us ask questions to get the answers we want. We're wanting that structure of, well, this is the way it should be. This is the way I want it to be. I don't want to change anything.
Right.
Right.
I want to take the conversation, Laura, in a slightly different direction. So listeners, just so you know, in real time, we've just experienced a technical glitch, which in some cases would be stressful, but here we were able to work it out, and we are back. Laura, we could hear her, but she couldn't hear us. And so we are back, and we are talking about what it's like to be a Trekkie. And so I just want to jump right into this issue. Star Trek has so much material to deal with. One of my favorite episodes is one that Christine wanted me to see for years. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of the episode, but it is one with Captain Picard, and he is forced to have to communicate with
in metaphors.
Yes, with the metaphors, right?
Yeah, with the metaphors.
Paul Winfield,
yes. Jalan, his arms open wide, and et cetera. And so when I saw that episode, I said, oh, this is so interesting because I like to juxtapose it as a left brain, right brain type of non-understanding miscommunication. And in this particular case, it had dire consequences because the enterprise was almost destroyed because they just could not understand what they were doing. And so, could you talk a little bit about that, Laura? Your perspective of have you ever been in a situation with people where people are just, one side is just not understanding the other because either the words that are being used have a different meaning or the setup is a different frame of reference, and where the intention of what is to be said is totally misunderstood or upside down, causing tremendous conflict unnecessarily and unintentionally?
Well, I've been married twice and divorced twice, so obviously there are communication issues I'm familiar with.
Okay.
Okay, but I do a lot of consulting work with clients, and as I'd mentioned, I have a radio show, so I interview people for a living, one of the things I do. And it's always fascinating to me how important language is and words, but not only words, but the context of the words. So I'll often, as somebody's talking about something, have to stop and say, okay, define what that means for you to me, because I could tell on the conversation that our definitions, our roots of where we're approaching something are coming from a different direction. I've started asking people a lot what their definitions of success and failure are, and in the process of doing that, what I've realized is we all have very different definitions of success and failure. And because of that, if we don't understand where the other person is coming from, we can start butting heads on things. Like if I start working with a client and they define success only as making millions and millions of dollars, but I think that what they're going for success is maybe moving up the corporate ladder or starting their own business, it's not going to jive unless I can put into alignment their belief of making money and how they're going to get there in one place. Sort of like the Star Trek episode where they're speaking in metaphors. I mean, even if you look and go back to, say, The Wrath of Khan, right, where in that episode they go back to this planet, which they didn't realize because the planets had all changed, and the Ricardo Montalban character, he's this superhuman being. They work from one place of, well, everybody who's not equal to us doesn't matter, and they should be subjugated to whatever we do. Whereas Captain Kirk and Picard and all of those, and Chekhov, all of those original characters, they're going from, we have to look out for the good of the whole. Nobody is above another. But unless you're on the same page, a war happens. I mean, you can see that in today's day and age. I don't like to talk politics, but social media can often be misinterpreted because you don't get the context around which that's going.
Yes, one of the things that one of my coaches always said is that people will have misunderstanding around the same word, not necessarily different words, because the same word has a different meaning to people. You know, we have a different history to the word. Like if you say, oh, let's have dinner, and someone in their family of origin, dinner was always a fight around the dinner table. Someone else, dinner was always a great time where we sat down, we ate together, and we expressed, how much we loved each other. So the same word or the same concept can just conjure up different feelings and different thoughts to different people.
I can give you a great extreme example of just that, what you were talking about. When I was working corporate, before I left and started my tech company, I was in England for 6 weeks working on a project for them. It was unusual for women to be in the engineering roles, and I was over there helping convert systems for people. And I got to know the people I was working with. We worked nights to convert the systems. And they're like, so what are you going to be doing today during the day? And I'm like, oh, I saw this great pair of pants at the store, and I'm thinking about going back and buying it, and I wanted to go to Oxford and Cambridge and drive around. And they never got to the part of I wanted to drive around and go to Cambridge and Oxford. They froze at I'm going to buy pants because in the British vernacular, pants are underwear.
Oh, my God.
Right? They're not, you would say trousers for slacks. But in America, pants are what you put on, and they're the outerwear. But to them, pants was underwear and female garments, and you didn't talk about that. And then I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? And yeah, and it's such a simple thing, but we think everybody has the same definition.
You know, Laura, you just jump-started a thought of a very embarrassing situation where, and I'm sure, you know, many of our listeners may have come across this. You know, this was a situation where this was a training and there were, let's say, 20 men in the room and one woman, but it could easily be, you know, 20 women in the room, one man, or, you know, some other combination where there's the one person that's different. You know, the person has red hair or everybody is clean-shaven and the one person has a beard, but whatever the issue. And so I remember this training very clearly, and, you know, I'm going to change the story a little bit so that
to protect the innocent,
that they won't be able to protect the non-innocent, right? But no, she really was innocent. So here we're in a training, right, professional training situation, and the trainer makes a joke about baseball. And in this particular case, the woman, she's not from the United States, so she's not familiar with baseball. If we were talking about soccer, so she didn't really understand what the guy was saying, and so she raised her hand and she said, "Excuse me, so if I understand you right, you want me to lateralize you?" And all the men burst out laughing in the room, and I was sitting next to her. And I was trying not to smile. And then when she said it again, even the trainer, you know, he turned purple. And so, but the point of the story is that she did not understand what she had said. And she was like, well, what just happened? And so I think many of us have had situations like that where we've come and said something, or we walked into a room in a situation where something's going on and we're the only one that doesn't know what's going on. That is very stressful and causes anxiety. And so what happened was when I explained it to her, of course, she was very, very embarrassed, and I flipped it around because I think in these situations it's really important to do. What I said to her and then what I said to the group later was, you know, if this was a room full of 20 women and one guy and the same thing was said, no one would have laughed. And I think that that's an important thing, as you were saying, context and the composition of the group. It does matter.
It matters tremendously, and we see it come out not only in business environments that they can create stress, but, you know, the three of us are major Star Trek fans, right? But if we shift it over to the Star Wars universe, where there's been this reimagining, even in the Star Trek universe with the latest movies, they've basically paid homage to the original shows, but completely changed them by saying, we've got a new timeline going and things have changed. Fans are going nuts saying you can't do this. There's no way that I'm going to accept this. You've committed sacrilege almost by changing the universe around us. But yet, if we step back and take it in a different context of how can we further this for a new generation to take it and expand it without redoing the same stories, all of a sudden you can see how Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, Enterprise, those could come into being in the new movies. With Star Wars, how they did this new movies, The Force Awakens, which was basically a retelling of Star Wars in a slightly flashier way with more special effects and killing off, I can't believe they did this, but Han Solo, but it takes it to another level. It's the same kind of context, right? Do you stay with an old way of thinking, or do you move forward, getting everybody on board to say, here's where we're at, here's where we want to go, let's figure out the way to get there? Does that make sense? Or am I rambling completely unintelligently?
No, not at all, but I think it speaks to who we are as human beings. There's an aspect of our being that likes constant, and then there's another aspect of our being or life itself that is constantly changing. So, for instance, our physical body, we like to eat at regular intervals, sleep at regular intervals. It's wonderful for our health and well-being. At the same time, our mind likes challenge. Our mind likes novelty. We're curious. We're looking to do new things. So there is that duality or conflict, and how do you blend those two together to work for you? And I think what you do or what you like, it's all about the questions to ask and ask again. Did I understand you correctly? Did this really happen? Is all the Vulcans are dead? I thought the Vulcans lived. So, to look and to question what happened, how did this happen, why, where is this going, that it is important to ask these questions. Even when we were talking about the Darmok episode with Picard and Dathan not understanding each other, that they kept going. They kept repeating the story. They kept repeating their phrases, staying together, working it out until they could come to an understanding.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Wright, Jr., the Stress Relief Doctor, co-host of the Learn to Live Stress-Free podcast series. I'm an author, speaker, and stress management wellness coach. My published study is the first to show the connection between stress reduction, grief recovery, nitric oxide spiking, and the relaxation response. And my practical application of this knowledge helps you relieve the stresses of everyday life. I have the tools to dissolve your pain points quickly and effectively. Email me to find out how you can start to feel better now at stressfreenow.info/contact. That's stressfreenow.info/contact. Have you been procrastinating about completing an important project or pursuing a treasured dream? Christine Wright specializes in helping her coaching clients to lay out clear, elegant strategies. She shows you how to quickly build your confidence to uncover and eliminate your habitual patterns of resistance and self-sabotage. Christine helps you discover those meaningful insights that will get you to do what works so you can celebrate your successes. Go to stressfreenow.info/contact to let Christine know that you're ready to live your ideal life now. Again, that's stressfreenow.info/contact.
Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free.
Well, I'm going to just jump in here. Laura, you have touched on something really, really important that Christine and I talk about from time to time. The reason I know it's important is because I'm getting chills and goosebumps just thinking about what you just mentioned. And here's the issue. The issue is, people say things like the only thing that's constant or assured is change. Part of the issue is that we as people, to a certain degree, enjoy familiarity. And Christine and I go back and forth on this, and I know a lot of people do too. So the thing becomes, it's not that we're against change. The issue is that are we talking about change for change's sake? And here's what example. I remember going into, I think it was Lord & Taylor, and there was a fragrance that I used to use that I really, really love. And when you have a fragrance that you really enjoy, you know what it is. So I hadn't seen it in years, so I picked it up off the counter. I said, ooh, there it is, this fragrance I haven't seen in a long time. And it was a sample, so I sprayed it on my wrist, and then when I smelled it, I said, ooh, what is this? This is not the same thing. And then the sales clerk tried to reassure me that, oh, yes, this is the same fragrance. I said, listen, buddy, this is not, and then there was a sales lady a nice sales lady who came up. She had worked at the store over 15 years. She said, oh, yeah. She says, it's in the same packaging, but they changed the formula. I said, well, duh. I know that. The new guy doesn't know that. But this speaks to this constant change that we're seeing, Laura, that Christine had reminded me. There's certain things about familiarity that are very comforting, that spike your dopamine level, that spike your oxytocin. Just to move to another film, there's a movie called Ratatouille, and which we've seen in French, Spanish, German, and of course English. Very funny. But there's the film critic. No, he's a restaurant critic, Antoine Ego, and I'm not sure.
I love that movie.
It's an animated film. If you've ever
I love that movie. Yeah.
Yes, and so the issue is here, Antoine Ego comes into the restaurant and he says, you've been playing against the rules because you've been playing without an opponent. But ultimately, when he tastes the ratatouille, and he has that moment of truth or epiphany, the pen falls out of his hand. Why? Because he's taken back in time to his childhood. And I think that this is what we're up against sometimes, that there are all these changes. Hey, we made a new flavor. We changed the formula for Coca-Cola. Remember that disaster when they changed Coke?
Such
right?
a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, but we are up against this every day. And so I have said to Christine, even today, I said, there's something very comforting about, going somewhere. We use GPS, but isn't it nice that we can go someplace that's familiar to us and the route hasn't changed, we get there and the place is there. We're here back visiting New York City, and we are both marveling at all the changes. I was like, well, what happened to the Wendy's over there? I was in downtown Brooklyn last night, and the White Castle that has been there for 45 years, it's gone. So I said to someone, how could White Castle be gone? They said, well, it's gone, and this is gone, and this is gone, and this is gone. So it's almost like the New York City that I knew, that where I was born, it doesn't exist anymore. So some people are like happy with that, but it's actually very unsettling to see places that you thought you knew and you don't recognize anything. So I think in terms of stress, we're all dealing with this change thing. Some people, they like the change, and for other people, is because the change is becoming faster and faster, it causes a high degree of stress if we don't figure out some strategy for dealing with that. So I want to thank you for bringing that issue up. And then I just want to switch topics quickly to something that we said we talk about, which is elder care. Can you give us your take on elder care, because so many people are having to deal with that issue?
Certainly. As you know, for 5 years, I've been caregiving full-time for my mom. I was married when it first happened, and we got divorced a few years ago. Mom has vascular dementia. She's had open heart surgery. She has congestive heart failure, emphysema, AFib. It's just
wait, Laura, wait. Start that list again. I mean, that's mind-boggling what you're saying. Start that list again for our listeners.
Vascular dementia, congestive heart failure. She's had open heart surgery. She gets clots. Did I mention emphysema? She has AFib, which is atrial fibrillation around the heart, and now she's got this new symptom where her legs just feel like they're giving out. It's almost like a Parkinson's thing where her leg will just start shaking, and if I'm not there to catch her, she falls. And you can see the fear start to build up in her as the leg's doing it, but because of the dementia symptoms, it's hard for her to express what she's feeling, what's going on, because she doesn't have the words, because her brain can't interpret the signaling, and the brain is not signaling the body properly anymore. And I've had my own health issues over the last few years, and something that the two of you don't know about, I might have sent it to you recently as an email, is I realized I was in a pretty severe chemical depression, which had only happened to me once before when I was being treated for Lyme and another tick-borne illness called Babesia, and the drug cocktail, I have a rare side effect of depletion of serotonin. So they had to put me on something. It was horrible. It was like, I don't wish that on anybody. And recently I realized I was back there again, and I couldn't figure out why. And I remembered when the three of us had spoken way back, we were talking about some different things, and you were talking about serotonin, we were talking about stress, and I had discovered I had some traumatic brain injuries that, with all the stress I'm under from caregiving for my mom, entering into, dare I say it, menopause. I'm 54, and now I'm officially, September 20th, I'll be officially there because it'll be a year. But all of that stress on my body, chemically, my body couldn't handle things. And I went on a homeopathic for it, thanks to a dear friend who's a 30-plus year homeopath, who you would love, by the way. And it started to shift me out of it, but I couldn't handle the stress. I mean, you guys would be reaching out to me, and I wasn't calling you back. I wasn't even emailing, and I couldn't understand why. And then one moment, I had this aha, right? When I hit so far down in the dregs of what I was feeling, and my mom's legs were doing it, a doctor said to me, "I really want you to listen to me, Laura. I think you're depressed and it's not your fault."
Okay.
And it's really interesting that he used those words, that it's not your fault, because I always felt I could get myself out of the depression. If it was situational, right, I could get myself out of it. But the chemistry wasn't there. I couldn't maintain it. If I ate a bunch of Hershey's chocolate bars, and it was very specific, it had to be a Hershey's chocolate bar. I mean, Christine, I tested this, and it only worked with Hershey's. And then I started laughing because, their whole thing growing up was Hershey's happiness.
Right.
And it was like the happy thing. So it must have been whatever the balance of the chocolates, the cocoa fats, and all of that. And it was a very specific amount. I did the test until I can do it, and then I said, I can't keep medicating myself with sugar.
With the chocolate. So this doctor knew you well to say that, because they understood your overdeveloped sense of responsibility.
And perfectionism.
Wow.
And it was fascinating because he used the words, right, and that enabled me to stop in place and then go, oh, wow. And then I started thinking about it, and I flashed back to that last point in time. And he wanted to put me on an antidepressant, but I said, let me see if there's another option. And I started asking questions of several other doctors and talking to my friend who then helped me out. She said, try this first. In 2 doses, all of a sudden, it was, okay, hi, my name is Laura. Who I am is Joy, which is what I had gotten in a landmark course a number of years ago, was that's who I am in essence. But caregiving for my mom made me lose parts of my identity, choices I made, that I put my mom first and stopped taking care of myself. I didn't do things for me because I never knew what was going to happen for her.
Okay, Laura, I'm going to start weeping over here. Listen, what this makes me realize is that we need to have you back and do an episode just on this topic. I want to thank you for sharing so deeply. If you could just see what I see, which is Christine nodding, because I think, our parents, mean so much to all of us. So to see a person that, we know and love not be in full states of full health, whatever that means, it's painful. And then what you just added, which is that you were yourself experiencing burnout to a large degree because you were, of course, putting your mother first and then, forgetting to put your own oxygen mask on. So I think that we most definitely, our listeners would have heartfelt stories, like yours. And again, I know that I wouldn't be the only one. I was listening to you, and I could actually feel the pain and angst that you had to. Of course, no one could know exactly what you're feeling, but your story, just, my gosh, that to have to go through so much stuff. I'm getting the signal from Christine so she can.
Part of what you're saying, Laura, I think some other people may experience that when you are caregiving for someone close to you, when there's a close emotional tie, it's really easy to lose your objectivity, because whether you realize it or not, there may be a great deal of fear at play, and some people may realize it, and overprotectiveness. And so it's very easy, I think, to lose sight of your own needs and your own health. I mean, so many times I think all of us, the three of us on this call and people listening, they've heard stories where it's the caregiver who predeceases the person they're caring for.
Yes.
Yeah, and what happened in November was I fell trying to rush to get to my mom who was at a rehab facility, and I broke my foot. And I'm alone in the house at the bottom of the stairs. I had heard the foot break, and the phone went flying out of my hand, and I'm laying there, and you guys will appreciate this. I'm laying there, and literally flashing through my mind are all these thoughts. The first thought was I was pissed off at my ex-husband for abandoning me and that this wouldn't have happened if he was there.
Wow.
Right? No idea. I thought I was cleared through all the stuff around the divorce, but it was like I took care of him and now he's not here to take care of me. These are all instantaneous thoughts. The next thought was, okay, God, I said I needed a break. You didn't have to give me a literal one. And it just went on from there. And then I managed to sit up, realized there were no bones sticking through it, but my foot didn't look human. And I got to a phone, called somebody who took me to the ER, and then 4 days later I was on a knee scooter to go see my mom. It dropped off the concrete onto grass. I fell, injured my wrist, where I just had surgery in April. And it's like all these signs of my body, my in me telling me, Laura, you need to slow down and be more conscious of yourself. But I didn't know how to do that until that doctor said that sentence to me of, you're depressed, I feel you're depressed and it's not your fault, that I was able to step back. And sometimes we need somebody to take us outside of ourselves. In my book, What Would a Wise Woman Do?, I talk about taking care of yourself and putting on your oxygen mask first. But I couldn't see it in this particular case, and that just fed into all of my own insecurities of, but I have to be perfect. I talked about this in my book. I talk about it on stages. Even though in my book I told all my failings, for some reason this really made it super hard for me. And, on your show you talk about helping with stress and doing all these things, and I couldn't do all of them, and that just built the stress even more and more and more and more. So it was just this loop that just would not go away. It just kept looping over and over and over again, and we can link through multiple Star Trek episodes where they keep looping the last few minutes, right?
Right.
There's
but I was stuck in
it.
it.
They keep reliving the same day until it's, until
right. It's like the movie Groundhog Day.
And it gets resolved. So Laura, listen, let's put a semicolon on this discussion and to be continued. Just briefly tell our audience how they can get in touch with you, and we will have to have you back to continue this, especially this very important discussion on caregiving, elder care.
Sure. The best way to reach out to me is through my website, Laura at Laura Steward, and that's like a wine steward, Steward as in David.com. You can reach me there. My email, simple, Laura at laurasteward.com. I just love chatting with people and asking questions, and your audience is such a wonderful audience. I love your show so much, guys.
Okay, great, Laura. And just for our audience again, give our audience the name of your book again. What Would a Wise Woman Do? Questions to Ask Along the Way. And it's available wherever books are sold.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Laura. So, audience, you can get in touch with Laura at laurasteward.com. That's STEWARD. Thank you so much for being with us, Laura.
Thanks for having me.
Great. And Laura, what final thoughts or key idea would you like our audience to take away from today's broadcast?
The best thing, if people could remember that the right questions can change their life, it means everything. So learn to ask questions to get you the answers you need, not just the answers that you want. It's amazing the difference.
Great. Thank you so much for being our featured guest today, Laura. Till next time. So, audience, I want to thank you so very much for listening, and I want to thank you again
regardless of whatever time zone you're in right now. We so much appreciate your presence, and we have learned that our audience is worldwide, and we'll trust that you'll benefit in some special way from the information we delivered on today's show. Of course, as always, we look forward to and welcome your comments on our show. Please let us know if there are any additional topics you'd like to see us cover, or if there's a guest you enjoyed whom you'd like us to invite back. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us, including learning how you can get more results in your day and easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, and anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress Free Now podcast show, and you will receive a free gift from us. Call today to schedule your free consultation. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of StressFreeNow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.